In the last part of this Learned Optimism series, I got more into optimism with you. Let's do a quick little review. Optimism can help protect you against depression. It can help you see what you have achieved. It can enhance your physical well-being. The central skill of optimism is changing the destructive things you say to yourself when you experience the hard parts of life that all of us have. Becoming an optimist is not about being more selfish and more self-assertive or to be presenting yourself to others in overbearing ways. Becoming optimistic can be as simple as learning a set of skills that help you to talk to yourself from a more encouraging viewpoint when you encounter personal failures. Think of it as more than positive thinking. Optimism is a skill, and a skill can be learned. Today, I'm going to talk about the opposite of optimism, which is pessimism, and how that can move you into learned helplessness. We'll also talk a bit more about explanatory styles, but don't worry, this is all going to lead us into what we can do about it. Stick with me. There's great stuff ahead. All right, let's get into pessimism. If you remember from the very first episode in this series, there is a need for pessimism too. So make sure you pay attention to that as we learn more about pessimism today. Pessimists tend to believe bad events will last a long time, will undermine everything they do, and most importantly, they believe bad events are their fault. Pessimists give up more easily and get depressed more often. Depression is the ultimate expression of pessimism. People who have pessimistic habits of thinking can turn a setback into a disaster. Do you know anyone like this? Could it be you? I have some great news for you, or for your friend, whoever fits the description I just shared with you. Pessimism can be reversed. Pessimists can learn to be optimists by learning a new set of thinking skills. Like I said, pessimism isn't all bad. It has a role to play too. Pessimism can help us accurately look at reality, and this can make us wiser. It can heighten our sense of reality and give us more accuracy. A healthy, small dose of pessimism is needed to keep us all in check. All right, let's learn a little bit more and so we can understand more about what learned helplessness is. Learned helplessness is the giving up reaction, the quitting response that follows from the belief that whatever you do doesn't matter. Depression and helplessness are the same thing. They have the same brain chemical connection. Therapy for helplessness and depression should be based on changing people's explanations of why things happen to them. Looking at the beliefs of why hard things happen is the basis of change. If helplessness can be learned, then it means it can be unlearned. And I think that's really good news. When we look at things in this way, it builds in hope. If we just believe there is nothing we can do about anything, can you see how that will take hope away? It's actually a really simple concept, but when your thoughts loop in the inability to change anything, it's understandable why your hope would decrease. So how do you answer these questions? Have you been taught to be helpless, that nothing you do changes what happens? Or did you learn to look for more optimistic reasons for what happens? When you learn in advance that how you respond to circumstances actually matters, it can help to prevent learned helplessness. The sooner you learn it, the more ingrained it can become in your life. Beginning to recognize when you respond pessimistically is the first step. I think that brings a power into your life that no one can take away. It begins with believing that you have the choice of how to respond in any situation. Do you believe that you have the power to respond however you choose? Now, this could be a really good journaling prompt. Do you believe you have the power to respond however you choose? If so, what are you going to do differently in a circumstance you are struggling with right now because you believe that? If you don't feel it yet, how would allowing yourself to believe it change the way you could respond right now? Write those prompts down and schedule in some time either today or tomorrow morning and let yourself free write about those. See what comes up for you. Okay, let's now get into explanatory style. Explanatory style is the manner in which you habitually explain to yourself why events happen. It's the way we explain what happens in our lives. It's how we have learned to explain to ourselves why we get or don't get reinforcement for the things that we do. It's the way people explain to themselves the causes of bad habits. An optimistic explanatory style stops helplessness because it recognizes that it's a one-time event, whereas a pessimistic explanatory style spreads helplessness because it feels like it happens in every situation. Your way of explaining events to yourself determines how helpless you become or how energized when you experience everyday setbacks as well as big defeats. Just choosing helps you to become more energized or more defeated. It's a choice in your thoughts. Now, working with a therapist to be diagnosed and treated if that's necessary for you, and then working with a coach like me can work together to help you to become more optimistic. It can help you from relapsing because when you learn skills that you can use again and again, you can rely on yourself and those skills that you've learned instead of relying on drugs. Now, drugs do bring relief from depression, but it's not permanent because when you stop taking the drug, it stops helping. Now, please don't take any of this as advice to stop taking medication that you are currently taking, or that I'm in any way implying that they are bad to take because they are not permanent. I don't believe either of those things. Medication, when it is prescribed by a competent doctor or therapist, work as activators. They push a depressed person up and out of the depressive state. The difference is they do not make the world look any brighter. That's where a coach can help you find those skills to make the world look brighter. The key to permanent relief of depression is a change in the way we look at the world, and that is a change in our explanatory style. When you learn skills that show that what you are thinking and how to change it, that's when progress starts to happen. You change your explanatory style. You develop confidence because of the control you have of yourself. You internalize the ability to change instead of relying on external help. Now, there are times when both internal and external help is required and should never be looked at as unnecessary. The reason why I'm sharing this today is to share with you the purpose of both and how they can work together. I took medication for a few years to get me up and out of my depression, as I was explaining before. But I found it to be true that although I felt better, I still didn't feel like myself. I felt like I was out of the heavy darkness of depression, but I was still feeling lost in the fog. The medication was necessary, and the length of time you may need to take it will vary. A lot of people need to take medication their entire lives, and if that's the case for you, then you should definitely do that. As I've learned skills that help me to become more aware of my thoughts and learn to manage my mind, that's when the person I've always been came back. Throughout this podcast, I've tried to share as many of those things that I have been doing, and as I learn more, I've been sharing more. Now, I have another skill that I learned from Dr. Martin Seligman that I wanted to share with you today. These go along with all of the things I'm sharing with you in this whole series. Just knowing a bit more information about the what and the why of your explanatory style can help you decide how you want to think, or at least notice what you are thinking. There are 3 different parts that make up everyone's explanatory style. Now, quick reminder, the explanatory style is the way you habitually explain to yourself why events are happening. The 3 parts that make up your explanatory style are permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. First, permanence is about time. If you give up easily because you believe that what has happened to you is permanent, you will feel helpless more than someone that believes it is temporary and won't be around forever. So pay attention to the words you use to help you see where you're at in this area. If you're using words like always and never, you are more permanent pessimistic. If you use words such as sometimes and lately, you are more optimistic. Can you see how that works? So that is more about permanence, how long you think it's going to stay. It's about time. The next part of your explanatory style is pervasiveness. Pervasiveness is about how much space it takes up. Now, I understand this one better when I think of it as how much of my life I have let my explanatory style seep into. If I let a negative event make every aspect of my life feel bad, that is more pervasive, or it takes up more space than if I keep it contained to just the one area of my life that this is happening to. For example, if I have a terrible situation at work and I make that mean my family and friends are also terrible, that's more pervasive. It's taking up more space in my life. If I keep it contained to the work situation only, then it is taking up less space and I don't let it spill over into the other things. The last part of the 3 parts of explanatory style is personalization. Personalization is if we blame ourselves for everything that is happening, which is internal, versus if we blame other people or circumstances for what is happening, and that's external. When someone blames themselves for failure, they often suffer with low self-esteem. People who blame external sources usually like themselves better. Now, this is the easiest of the 3 parts of explanatory style to understand, in my opinion. Remember, the 3 parts of explanatory style are permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. Those are tongue twisters, and I'm fighting hard to say them right. Now, whether or not you feel hope depends on 2 of the 3 parts of explanatory style. When you can find temporary and specific reasons for why things are happening, that's when you can allow yourself to feel more hope. If you feel like there is something permanent, then that creates helplessness. If you think it's never going to leave. If you feel like bad things happen in every part of your life, the space it takes up in your mind, that also creates helplessness. And when you start feeling helpless, hope really isn't available to you. Does that make sense? I'm hoping that putting words to the way you may be feeling and recognizing that you're not alone in the way that you feel will help you add to your hope. I am the hope coach. When we feel hope in the future and peace in our past, we can learn to be more optimistic. See how beautifully this all works together? All right, last week I gave you an assignment to write down your ABCs of optimism. How did that go? Did you find at least 5 examples of adversity, belief, and consequence, the ABCs? If you didn't listen to episode 139, I taught you all about the ABCs of optimism, and it would be good to have some examples that we can add on to with what we learned today. So if you haven't listened to episode 139, go back, create those examples of the A, B's, and C's, and then we're going to add on D today. The D stands for either Disputation or distraction. These are both ways for you to deal with your pessimistic style when you become aware of them. That's what you were practicing last week, learning to be aware of the way you're thinking, pulling out the A, B, and C. When you become aware of your thought, then go through the A, B, C to evaluate the event, you can now decide if you want to distract or dispute it. First, the easiest way is to start by distracting yourself when those pessimistic thoughts come. That just means you try to think of something else. This helps you to interrupt the thoughts that you are having. Interrupt the thoughts by choosing to think something else. Even if it does nothing else for you, you are showing yourself that you do have power over your thoughts. You can choose to think something different. Now, your brain thinks its job is to come to some solution about everything you think. And that's good for some things, but not for everything. You can do a few things with the thoughts you are trying to distract yourself from. You could tell your brain that you don't want to think about that right now and that you'll think about it later. You can even tell your brain a specific time that you'll come back to it, like, I'll come back and think about that at 7 o'clock tonight. That can calm your brain right down. You're distracting it. Now, you could also write the thought down on a piece of paper and journal about it either right then or decide on a time you'll do it later. Either way, your brain feels like it has been paid attention to and it will get to figure out this problem sooner or later. Usually, if it's not something that you really need to figure out, it's just going to float away. Doesn't that feel hopeful? You don't have to entertain every thought that ever comes into your head. And what a relief that is. The second D you could choose to use is disputation. This is actually a deeper way to deal with pessimistic beliefs. It's more lasting when you face the belief this way, and some of those thoughts do need to be disputed and faced head on. This can be done most effectively by writing them down. Go back to your ABC list and see which circumstances you wrote down that you can now answer by disputing them. Disputing your beliefs head on by journaling about them. Question your belief. Go deep with them. Why do I think this way? Is this real? Is there a different belief I would rather have? And why? Can I decide that I want to believe it? And if I do, how does that feel instead of holding on to my old belief? Look at this as having a really good argument with yourself. This is such a powerful way to journal. Have an actual argument with yourself on paper. Try to go at your thought from a bunch of different angles. By disputing what you automatically think is the only way, you can change future reactions to a more optimistic response. Who doesn't want a good excuse to argue, right? Now, if you don't believe me this works, try it. I dare you to see what happens. Add to your ABCs list from last week and add on the D. Either disrupt the thought or dispute it. Use your previous 5 events, or to keep practicing, look for new ones this week and add the D as well. Remember, this is work worth doing. Habits of thinking don't have to last forever. One of the biggest findings in the study of psychology in the last 30 years is that people can choose the way they think. To me, that brings so much hope. I'm not stuck in the habits that I don't want anymore. I can learn to think a new way. I have been learning to think in a new way, and that's why I know it can work for you too. Start by simply paying attention to the way you talk to yourself. Then choose to change the words you use. This is a form of work, but it is very worthwhile work. When you feel your emotions bringing you down, that is your cue to get to work. You don't have to feel helpless in this. You can choose to be optimistic more often. Even catching yourself once a day will get you there. You'll soon be catching yourself more and more, and you'll begin to feel more hope in the everyday things that used to bring you down. If you would like to speed up this process, I'm here to help you. I've helped many women, and a few men too, change their explanatory style. Having a coach like me to help you catch where your thinking may be permanent, pervasive, or personal can help you to progress into an optimist faster. I can help you see what you're thinking and help you make decisions that are more in line with who you really are. That is a beautiful change to watch someone go through, and I'd be honored to help you too. Register for a free 15-minute session with me and we'll get started building your optimistic explanatory style. The link is in the show notes, or you can just go to hunkydory.com/mini mentor. Let's get to work busting up those old pessimistic thought patterns and get you to a more optimistic life. Thanks for joining me here today. And remember, I see you. I understand how hard you're trying, and I'd like to help you however I can. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you back here again next week.